Yeah, so I will just introduce our
Yes,
first
please.
speaker. Kenneth Lapatin is the curator of antiquities at the John Paul Getty Museum. Unfortunately, he's not present, but he will have a pre-recorded presentation. And I would like to say that I'm very honored, first of all, to chair this small panel about new finds in excavations and especially museum collections, as I am also dealing with a similar collection. So I hope everyone will enjoy and have wonderful inputs and questions and helpful comments. So here we go to our first speaker.
Engraved gemstones have captivated collectors as well as those who used them as personal seals since antiquity. The poems in the Lithica of Posidippus of Pella attest to the high status of engraved gems at the Ptolemaic court at Alexandria, and Greek and Roman historians inform us that Pompey the Great dedicated the collection he captured from King Mithridates VI of Pontus to Jupiter Optimus Maximus on Rome's Capitoline Hill. Not to be outdone, Julius Caesar dedicated 6 dactyliothecae to his ancestress, Venus Genetrix, in the temple he built in the forum that bears his name. And the Emperor Augustus's nephew and one-time heir Marcellus subsequently dedicated yet another collection in the Temple of Apollo on the Palatine. Ancient gems were still valued, though often reset in the Middle Ages, and in the Renaissance, princes of church and state like Paul II and Lorenzo de' Medici amassed rich holdings. But in the 18th century, unparalleled collections were assembled by the likes of Baron Philip von Stosch, whose gems were catalogued by J.J. Winckelmann, and George Spencer, the first Duke of Marlborough, seen here on the right, holding one of his favorite cameos in this family portrait by Sir Joshua Reynolds. These collections have since been dispersed, but the Marlborough collection, at least, has been reconstituted by Sir John Boardman and his colleagues. Many other early modern gem collections were assembled and sold, and a good account of the most important of these was published by Peter and Hilda Zazoff in 1983, and much work has been done by other scholars since. Yet in all of this research, one collection and collector remains particularly elusive, so much so that we don't even know his exact name. I first learned of the Rosarena Collection reading John Boardman's account of the Ionides collection, formed in late 19th and early 20th century London by the expatriate Greek Constantine Alexander Ionides and his son Alexander Constantine Ionides, who had acquired at least 25 gems from this mysterious Latin American collector. His collection was, according to Boardman, one about whose ancestry little is known. It was made by a Mexican connoisseur called Rosarena, variously spelled Arozarena, Rosanna, even Arizona. 2 of the dozen Ionides gems acquired by the Getty in 2001 can be traced back to Rosarena. This carnelian depicting the Trojan hero Aeneas escaping Troy with his father and son on the way to found Rome on your left, and on your right, a stunning amethyst intaglio of Mark Antony, inscribed Gnios. The amethyst, however, was not carved by Gnios in the early Augustan period, as previously thought, but was in fact carved in the early 19th century by Giovanni Calandrelli for Prince Poniatowski. But that's another story, which you can read about here on the Getty's blog and in the most recent issue of the Journal of the History of Collections. Earlier mentions of our elusive collector by other scholars, notably Charles W. King in various publications, employed still more names for him in addition to the 4 mentioned by John Boardman. Rosanna with two N's, Rosarena with a Z, and Anzorena. The collection is first mentioned, to my knowledge, in King's 1866 Handbook of Engraved Gems, where his name is spelt two different ways, with one and two N's. And I shall return shortly to the two gems he describes there. In King's second edition of 1872, he prefers the second spelling, and also informs us that the collection was broken up by sale at Paris in 1868. A chronologically useful indicator, but unfortunately, I have been unable to find any record whatsoever of this sale. In 1888, however, when King published the Johnston Collection in New York, he refers to it as Rosarena rather than Rosanna, and informs us further that the choice gems in the Uzielli cabinet passed through the hands of the London dealer Eastwood and thus reached Rosarena. Meanwhile, in the 1898 sale of the Morrison collection, a cameo is described as formerly in the Rosarena collection. It is uncertain whether there is any relation between our collector of gems and Domingo Guillermo de Rosarena, a Cuban bibliophile, publisher, and collector of prints and drawings, active in Paris in the middle of the 19th century. He apparently exchanged Raphael's study for La Belle Jardiniere for some Greek and Roman medals, and his extensive collection of ancient coins, 931 lots, was sold by Rollin and Fouardon in 1867, but the catalog of that sale mentions not a single gem. Returning to the Uzielli sale, some of the Ionides gems Boardman published more than 50 years ago are clearly the same, as can be corroborated by the detailed descriptions, such as this combination Gorgonean Triskelles and lozenge-shaped emerald Dionysus. Likewise, this Silenus with a thyrsus drinking from a fiale, and the standing actor with pedum before a pillar topped by a mask. One of the prizes of the Rosarena collection was apparently a head of Zeus, sometimes described as Jupiter, perhaps actually Poseidon, carved on a pale sapphire, or perhaps an amethyst, which was acquired by the Ionides and displayed at the famous 1903 exhibition of Greek art at the Burlington Fine Arts Club in London. King said it was brought from India. Its inscription, Pi Upsilon, has led some to optimistically associate it with the most famous of ancient gem engravers, Pergottiles, the favorite of Alexander the Great. Its current whereabouts are unknown to me. The second gem described by King in detail seems to be this one, now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, depicting an elaborate Corinthian helmet with Bellerophon riding Pegasus above and the Chimera on the cheekpiece and a dog on the neckpiece. It had belonged to Prince Poniatowski and then Bram Hertz before being acquired by Rosanna, according to King. According to the Metropolitan Museum, it was also in the Robinson, Knott, and Wyndham Hook collections before they acquired it, but they have no record of it having been owned by Rosanna. That seems to have been lost. In fact, there is unfortunately no record, or at least none known to me, of the entire collection. In addition to this gem now in New York and the two now in the Getty, two others can now be traced to Japan, a cameo and intaglio. 24 others, some of high quality and clear antiquity, others evidently post-antique, were published by Boardman over 50 years ago. How much more can we say about the collector and the collection? He has been called a connoisseur, and King also mentioned that after the premature death of Matteo Uzielli, the most valuable Uzielli gems passed into the collection of Mr. Bale, but the more showy gems into that of Rosarena. Some of these stones had illustrious provenances, having previously belonged not only to Uzielli and Prince Poniatowski, but also Charles Scarisbrick, Bram Hertz, and Dr. George Frederick Knott. And many were subsequently acquired by the discerning Ioannidis. This amethyst Hellenistic portrait and a few others of the gems you've seen also won the approbation of Furtwängler and Lippold in the early 20th century. But the Rosarena gems published by Boardman and elsewhere are ultimately something of a mixed bag, some of very high quality, others less so. So I ask for your help. If you see any of these gems or read anything about the mysterious Signor Rosanna, Rosanna, Rosarena, Rosarena, Arizona, Arosarena, Arosarena, or Anzorena, I would be most grateful if you could please let me know. Thank you for your attention, and I'm grateful to the organizers of this meeting.
Well, we are also very grateful to have had the opportunity to hear this presentation. And unfortunately, the first speaker is not currently with us, but all the comments and all the questions and all the maybe other suggestions could be sent to him via email, which were probably very helpful. And I would just like to add that this kind of presentation is very revealing about the difficulties one faces when dealing with collections, private collections, sometimes after that becoming museum collections, and about ways of tackling these difficulties and trying to exhibit and put forward the pieces and discover new approaches to it. So I will now just introduce our second speaker, which is who is Amanda Gómez Checa from Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, Spain. About a glyptic collection from the Roman city of Valeria. Valeria is rich in many beautiful Roman materials, and I'm sure we will all be very impressed with what our colleague will present. Please, Doctor.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here. Valeria is a second category Roman settlement we can see here in the other side of Mediterranean Sea. And it's a second category Roman settlement located in the center of the Iberian Peninsula. It is set in a privileged area in the sense that it was very well communicated with routes that crossed the whole Iberian Peninsula from the north to the south. It was specifically located on a branch of the Complutum-Cartagonova route, which connects the inner central plateau with the main trading ports on the coast. It also connects the city with Zaragoza in the north and with Cordoba in the south. Roman presence in this territory begins in the 2nd century BC, around 179 BC. Tiberius Sempronius Graccho conquered the original city. The development experienced between the 2nd century BC and the 1st century AD caused abandonment of the native settlement and the creation of the new ones. This is what happened to Valeria. The city was probably relocated and built thanks to the patronage of the Praetor Valerio Flacco. The city was named in his honor in 82 BC. The city was named in his honor in 82 BC, exactly. The city was granted the Old Latin law. It was included in the Conventus Carthaginensis and it was in Tarraconensis province. And during Emperor August's time, the city was consolidated its urban planning and status in the Iberian Peninsula. Here we can see the Forum on Valeria. Okay. And the collection that we have is made up of 18 pieces that include gems and glass paste. 2 of those are placed on rings. They were found by chance by by the guards at the site when they were cleaning the excavation area done between the 50s, 70s. The forum was located in this area, and this was the public contest. And there were also founded and domestic area in this part. So was the private contest, which means we don't have a specific context for them. The pieces were first recorded just with a little description by Osuna Ruiz in 1974 in the memories in these years. And the main shape used in the collection, here we can see the little sketch of the forum. And like this, you can see better the proportion. The shape were oval shape, 13 pieces exactly, 3 with oval spherical shape, and 1 with a rectangular shape, and another one with a round shape. The chronology, how I say, is the main problem in this collection. Due to this, we need to focus on the manufacturing techniques and iconography to try and provide an estimate date. According to Valeria history and the information regarding the material, shapes, and iconography, we can place the Valeria collection from the end of the 1st century BC till the beginning of the 3rd century AD. Most pieces, we believe, belong to the period of the time between the 1st century AD and the middle of the 2nd century AD. This coincides with the height of the city. About the materials that we were used in this collection are in the majority semi-precious stones. There are 7 pieces made of carnelian, 3 red jasper, 3 nicolor, and 1 indented agate. The use of carnelian and jasper is not uncommon, as this material were widely used in workshops at the time. These materials were also not as expensive as other semi-precious stones, which made them more accessible to a wider scope of the population. And meanwhile, the nicolor, onyx, mended agate, and were considered more special due to their originality, characteristic, and unique mineral formation. Another widely used material was a glass paste. It was cheap and imitated natural stone. Due to this, it was also widely used. Therefore, lower classes with lower income, not only the elite could afford them. The rings, the material is the silver brass, and the overall look of the collection can be described like a simple and modest, and it was made using the most common materials in the empire. The topics in the collection first is the mythology, as there is the representation of the like Mercury that we have here, the Muse, that could be or Maenad. We have the Satyrs, the Eros, Dionysius. Then maybe could be the Prometheus with these with the futures, or the Caduceus. Here in black and white, you can see better the representation. And some of these are associated with the trade, prosperity, rural life, fertility, and health. The other topics, I have to mention this one with especially is the Hatter. And this one is one of the rings founded in silver brass with double glass paste and imitating a cameo, with really interesting these pieces. The other topic is the animals. With or without symbolic value, like the eagle associated to Saturn, or the horse associated to the strength and endurance in different areas of human life, like livestock farming, racing, and the army. There are natural elements that are observed, like butterfly, used as source of food, hunting, like the previously that we watched, and helping agricultural and farming activities, drop animal like horses, and herding like dogs. There is a fondness towards nature. Apart from these topics, there are 3 possible male portraits which are difficult to identify, but were probably personal possessions that were engraved in the style of the time. In this case, we can see here the barb, and in the other one with the young's portrait. Here, the other glass paste, green glass paste. The next one possible scene will be the erotic scene. It will be made in glass paste, dark red glass paste, and that we know were represented in various sportsmen, painting, sculpture, tableware, bronze glass, females. There was a liking for fashion that just could be. And there is also a simple scene from everyday life that show a jug and piece of bread. And these were a staple of the Roman diet. Valeria collection is not connected to a specific workshop. Most of the pieces probably came from an Italian workshop, while others could have been manufactured by the Egyptians. The transportation of minerals was an important economic source during the empire, and in a similar way to the magical religious sphere at the time. The clients were not the only ones, I think, who were connected spiritually to the pieces. I think that the artists probably were equally invested. And the value of the gems did not only depend on their natural formation characteristics, that had wholesome magical and religious properties. And it's believed that one of the largest centers for the manufacturing of pieces with a magical religious nature was in Alexandra, in the Nile Delta. Therefore, it isn't strange to think that some pieces found in the Iberian Peninsula have an Egyptian origin. In relation to the Valeria collection, pieces with Egyptian nature were found in the forum of the site. How I say it, the hatter heads imitating a cameo. This one is a Phoenician Carthaginian influence. There is not a hattoric flux in the Roman period in this moment, but was founded in the Roman context. The other one is the denarius, an engraving of Marco Antonio and Cleopatra. We have a late Hellenistic period, a high quality red colored glass. It was manufactured in Alexandria, and it was colored using gold oxide, which, due to its intense pigmentation, is known as sangue de toro. This one is what we found it, and this one is just an example that will be the last fragment we found. Is an Egyptian base found in Culebras in Cuenca. This is in Valeria territory, in the region. This is a vicus, it's a village dependent of Valeria. The fragment talks about a bold priest and probably belonged to 4th, 3rd century BC. But it was discovered in a Roman context. So this is justified, or is the theory, is the local curia recruited troop of the Celtiberian origin to send to Munda during the rule of Pompey and then to Julius Caesar. Then they will arrive to Egypt with Marco Antonio. This is the reason of the presence of Egyptian Oriental elements in Roman period, and they are exclusive to Valeria region. The movement of materials wasn't just due to trade, but also in this case, we think that due soldiers moving from one post to another, indicate soldiers who came back to Valeria. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. The presentation was extremely interesting, especially because you have beautiful pieces that come from excavations, which is quite rare to have so many, and so it's so many analogies, and which will probably generate a lot of discussions. Some have already popped up on the chat, and maybe we can just address them now. So we have one comment here. I'm sorry, my chat is a bit full, so it takes me a second to just get to the... So from Dr. Elisabetta Gadgetti, we have a question. Is carnelian number 18 a cameo or a gemstone receiving a surface treatment to whiten the device?
The number 18, one moment, yes.
It's not a problem, but just to be sure, just to have this in mind, we have a second question. It's also a comment from our colleague, Kathy Sass.
Okay.
And she says that she's not completely sure, but perhaps figure 17 seems to represent Hercules wrestling the Nemea lion. So this is also a comment that you might
17. Okay, yeah, the roticus in the say. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we don't have any more other comments in the oh, we have one more. So there is one from Alessandra Magni, who is also a speaker in this session, saying that she appreciates the iconographic and stylistic variety of the excavated gems compared to those in collections, which of course we can all appreciate. And I think we can all address all of these issues. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Mia?
Dai, ci sentiamo. Ciao Roberto. Ciao anche a te.
Not exactly.
I made an observation, not
An observation, exactly.
an observation, yes, not because these gems are. I appreciate the variety of iconographic and stylistic gems. In collection, we have a more standardized type, but is related to the collectors who sometimes have drawn with the deposits of ancient workshop to complete their collection.
Very useful comment. And apparently it spawned several other comments because we have another question asking if the Egyptian vase must be dated to the 4th, 3rd centuries BC. And a second, well, a fourth actually, if we take it logically. It's from Karina Weiss, who would be interested in the gem with the white bread and jar, who may be a bit later than dated by our speaker. So would you like to address this now, or should we just save them all to the end discussion?
Yeah, if we have a little time, I can say some once. I don't know if I could go after the rest one. About the future of the 17, the Hercules, I'm going to take in consideration because it's true that we talk about the college, to see if this will be a possible, the erotic scenes. And for me, even sometimes I watch it in the horizontal position more than in vertical positions. So I'm going to take in consideration and to check in different perspective. Because we talk about, and we were even in doubt, this duration that I have an interrogation because could be maybe to have another point about the difference for Alessandra, the difference collection that and you see in the deposit of ancient workers is this one. For me, in general, when I was checking the difference collection on the books in the other countries, I saw that in general was made it in the empire. I mean, yes, okay, the Hathors, or maybe this one was the most the peculiar, but it was the general themes, the general topics, also the materials. So I think it's really included knowing these styles and beliefs and customs in the Roman Empire. I think for me, I really agree with this one. The next one, the Egyptian
vase, yes.
Yeah, 4-3 BC was the last one, what we thought, but maybe we thought that would be a little bit even before for this one. I'm going to pass in you the study that we have it. There is, we will explain to you really better, but we think even will be even before. But the curious in this way furthermore was found in this Roman contest. That is really strange in this way. And for the other one, is the
white bread.
The bread and the jar. We see, I think that will be, because it's really difficult. I know that it's really iconographic. It's really sample. I can study better, but in this way, I could check. In this way, it's just to check how it's made it, because we don't have any contest in this way. but I will, you have another suggest or another questions?
Well, so I guess everybody.
May I speak? May I speak?
Please, Dr.
I would suggest that this white is deliberately burned. We have rings in late antiquity that have a white inscription around a red surface, and it is deliberately burned carnelian. So you could check if your material was done like this too. And then I would combine that with these rings. I can send you some examples if you like.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for your input, and hopefully we'll have even better and more focused discussion at the end of the session. So now I will introduce our next speaker. Yes.
Sorry, I think this is Kathy. If I just show you, I'm trying to share an image.
Yes.
Of the gem I have in the Belgian finds, but I cannot seem to be able to.
I should work with the share screen and then just.
Yes, and I share screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you can see this
yes,
now.
Yeah, we see it.
So Amanda, if you need an image of that ring, that gem, I can always send you one. Just drop me a note by email and I'll send you the image.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
When you have seen the other side, the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I understand you perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, the other one is like what I have is round. It's like a more pure, no? But it's true, like now I understand when I saw, yeah, it's true that we can put on, now I can see it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if you need it, just let me know and I'll send you the information.
Okay, thank you very much. It will be really interesting about. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you all. Let's try and stick a little bit closer to the schedule. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Germana Perani from Società Storica Lodigiana from Lodi, Italy, a specialist in archaeology and also in museum studies, talking to us today about a collection, the site on the Greek and Byzantine East of a Milanese collector, Amilcare Ancona. And well, I think we will all enjoy to hear news about this collection and the beautiful pieces in it.
The glyptic section is added belatedly to the vast Ancona collection. There is no trace of it in the 1880 catalogue, while some gems are mentioned in the 1886 catalogue. It seems that the piece with which Ancona started his collection of gems was the gem of Eutike, now preserved in Berlin, where it arrived from the auction of Ancona collection in Milan in 1892. In 1982, Pompeo Castelfranco, palethnologist, inspector of excavations and antiquities in Milan, and a personal friend of Amilcare Ancona, edited the auction catalogue of this collection. It shouldn't be a scientific catalogue, but only a useful tool to facilitate the sale of individual objects or lots of materials in their collection. For us, it is the only list of gems in this collection, a total of 139 pieces. These are very general indications. With regard to the two busts, it cannot be excluded that they were not gems but small sculptures in precious non-metallic material. Furthermore, The significant number of Etruscan scarabs is related to the interest that Ancona shows for these people, considered as the first unifier of Italic people before the Romans. Also, the breadth of the Etruscan section is proof of this interest, with pieces of great excellence and with the significant amount of materials with inscriptions. It is possible that these scarabs came from excavation contests. Dennis, in his Cities and Cemetery of Etruria, mentions a place near Chiusi called Campo degli Orefici, Goldsmith Fields. This name is due to the large number of scarabs that were discovered here. We know that many materials in the Etruscan collection of Amilcare Ancona came from excavation in the Chiusi area or from collector or antique dealers in the city. It is also very likely that Ancona knew the work of Dennis and used it as a guide to plan his travels in Etruria. Furthermore, the excavation at Vulci, Cerveteri and Tarquinia had also brought back different types of scarabs. But the period in which the Ancona glyptic collection was formed in the second half of the 19th century coincided with the success of the Etruscan goldsmithing in the workshop of Alessandro Castellani. In creating these precious necklaces, as well as other jewels, were used both scarabs from excavation, both from Roman or Neapolitan antique market, and modern reproductions too. The loss of these items leaves the question open. The fact that there are 16 engraved and written Greek and Roman semi-precious stones is proof of Ancona's passion for artifacts with inscription. The presence of 2 Byzantine cameos can be linked to the scientific and collecting rediscovery of early Christian, Byzantine, and early medieval art that characterizes the final decades of the 19th century. Of the 139 pieces in the glyptic collection, only 4 are still preserved today: the gems of Eutiche in Berlin and the 3 gems in a private collection. The piece comes to Ancona from the collection of Marquis Carlo Strozzi, an important numismatist. The piece was purchased in Florence. In Rome, he bought the cast of this gem from the numismatist Giancarlo Rossi. We have only a photo of this cast published by Vittorio Poggi. It is the only gem signed by this artist which the verb "e poi" defines as author of the carving. In the signature, the artist proclaims himself son or pupil of Dioscuride. Eutiche shows awareness of his own identity as an artist and proudly claims family and professional childbirth with Dioscuride and his geographical and cultural origin. He declares himself coming from Age in Cilicia. The place of origin of the gem is unknown. Dioscuride is known to us from literary sources, Pliny and Suetonius. He operates between the end of the 1st century BC and the beginning of the 1st century AD, and it is celebrated by Pliny and Suetonius for the seal with the portrait of Augustus, whose perfect resemblance is emphasized. Glass mold of Heracles, so-called Bibax. characterized by a large flattened edge and an irregular outline. The original carnelian intaglio, now lost, was part of the Marlborough collection. Copies from the Roman period are known, such as the ring bezels preserved in Vienna, dated to the 1st century BC, and in the Museo Archeologico Nazionale of Aquileia. It is then replicated in glass past imprints that document its iconographic fortune. Moreover, this iconography always seemed to be connected to small objects, such as gems. The inscription Admon has not had an unique interpretation by over time. Furtwängler understood it as the name of the owner, while Vollenweider considers it the names of the carver. This opinion is based on a comparison with a gem preserved in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, depicting Ajax before his suicide, the work of this artist. The characteristic of the letters can be placed between the end of the 3rd and the beginning of the 2nd century BC. The glass molds are not frequently found in the collection, as they are working tools used in the glyptic workshop to reproduce the gems. It is likely that the presence of the signature, engraved with beautiful Greek characters, attracted the attention of our collector, who loved objects with inscription very much. The small bust finds a comparison in the portrait of Antonia, preserved in cast in the Ravestein collection in Brussels. Both depictions can perhaps be traced back to the intaglio with the head of Io by Dioscuride. The myth is widely present in the glyptic repertoire of the Hellenistic and Roman period, and the iconography of the girl with the small bovine horns on the forehead has a lot of luck in Ptolemaic Egypt, because in this land and the renderings of this unhappy girl, transformed into an heifer and forced to wander from land to land, chased by a gadfly set against her by Hera. Here, on the Nile shores, she gives birth to Epaphos, the mythical king of Egypt, and thanks to the caresses of Zeus, she regains a human aspect. So this iconography of Io, mother of sovereign, is adopted by Arsinoe II, adoptive mother of Ptolemy Evergete. Both the iconography and the identification are then taken up by other Ptolemaic princesses and by the women of the Julius Claudian house. Gems and glass replicas portray Giulia, Agrippina Minore and Antonia Minore with these characteristics. Helmeted head in profile to right. Many heroes are depicted with this iconography: Menelaus, Hector, and Ulysses. The prototype could be the gem with the bust of Ajax, preserved in Musei Vaticani, presented here in a cast by Paoletti. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very revealing about the potential of a collection, although very few pieces still remain. I mean, the work of deciphering the iconography, the inscriptions, and the artist is amazing, and it adds value to the pieces. Thank you. Would you like to continue? Would anyone have some questions, or should we just reserve the time at the end after our final presentation of the session? The chat is clear so far, but that doesn't mean that we do not have specialists who are not interested in asking questions at the end. Okay, so I guess we will pass to our last but not least speaker, to another specialist in gemstones and iconography, Alessandra Magni from Liceo Classico e Linguistico Alessandro Manzoni, also from Italy, who will identify the Eastern gems in a Western collection, which again sounds very promising.
Yes.
Thank you. And you have a pre-recorded presentation.
Yes. Just a moment. I'm very glad to participate in this e-conference when I find both colleague, then masters, yeah. And I apologize for some mistake in my presentation, my video presentation in English, in some caption, and particularly for yes, but particularly for my creative interpretation of a gem that it's a bit creative, in a gem about Aegaea, but I tribute this interpretation to Professor Hennig, but it's a mistake. It's mine. It's quite full, so I apologize for this.
I mean, this means that at the end we will have something to talk about.
No, I interpreted the parasol, who are around Aegaea, the Betylos of Aegaea. Perhaps they could be the head of Dioscuri, because in Mount Argaios, I talk about Mount Argaios, the mount is surrounded by the stars of Dioscuri, and the Dioscuri complete the image of this mount.
So you have two interpretations that we will talk
about.
Yes.
Please, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With pleasure, I participate in this conference dedicated to ancient Greek, Roman, and Byzantine engraved gems in the Eastern Mediterranean and Black Sea area. I take the observation point of a scholar who, by classifying and studying loose specimens, poses the usual 5 W's: who, how, what, where, and why. I will present some engraved gems from the collection of the Civici Musei d'Arte di Verona. The collection, now in the Museo Archeologico al Teatro Romano, was formed in the 18th and 19th centuries and houses numerous intaglios produced in the nearer Aquileia workshops. Other gems, especially glass gems, were purchased in the antique markets of Rome and probably of other parts of Italy. Is it possible, from a collection so strictly related to Italy, both in birth as in composition, to extrapolate elements to discuss about Oriental gems? We should say yes. The circulation of gems in ancient times was systematic, guaranteed by trade flows beyond the production places, the location of which has been much discussed, and occasional or sporadic due to the circulation of the people that brought these gems with them, merchants, soldiers, travelers. The gems traveled throughout both space and time, passing from owner to owner by inheritance, sale, theft, etc. Aquileia, so close to Verona, was the main important gemstone hub of Italy, from the late Republican age onwards, where the path of amber and that of semi-precious stones cross, and where an excellent level of artistic craftsmanship was developed. Many products of Hellenistic age housed in the Verona collections are in glass. This occurrence further complicates the recognition. Glass replicas were created starting from a metal or stone matrix, even far from the place of production and late in time. Here we can see some examples for which comparisons come from Mediterranean area and from Rome. This glass scarboid with a head of Heracles, in which the feature of Philip II have been recognized, was probably created in Greece. For Imperial Age glyptics, The comparisons that Verona gems find, for instance, in clay ceiling groups and in gem of Oriental collection, offer little evidence of the Eastern production of these intaglios. Most of the time, they demonstrate the ability of Aquileia craftsmen to enter such distant markets, directly or indirectly. Here we can see very generic subjects, in which, however, we can really recognize individual workshops whose products are distributed both in Mediterranean and in West provinces. The collection houses also a lot of magical gems, for which we can imagine the opposite path in ancient times, from east to west. Among them is unpublished this yellow jasper depicting Helios and Artemis Hecate. Let's focus on a series of Oriental gems to be recognized by the link with religious, anthropic, or geographical elements of a given territory, in turn represented on the monetary issues. These two gems reproduce deities venerated in the city of Ascalona, quite a unicum. In both, the recognition takes place starting from the figures of Derceto, the local form of Astarte, and Phanebalos, the local form of Perseus. We can see also Poseidon. These deities abound on the coins of Ascalona. In this case, the almost total absence of iconographic comparisons for these gems and the variety with which they are created suggest a production on demand, perhaps in close connection with the artisan who produced the coins. Some problems raised by these Ascalona gems recur with regard to an interesting unpublished gems depicting Mount Argaios. Mount Argaios, Erciyes Degi, is an inactive volcano. It is the highest peak of Cappadocia and the entire Anatolian peninsula. The name of its origin refers to the color of the white snow that covers its peaks. The fame of this mountain in ancient times is testified by the ancient literary sources that illustrate it. Strabo gives a precise geographical description of it. Maximus of Tyros reaffirms the three features of the mountain. For the Cappadocians, Argaios is a god, an oath, a cult stature. The mountain itself was worshipped not only as a seat of divinity, but as a divinity itself. It is proved by both the agalmata representing the mountain and the coin images where Mount Argaios is located inside a temple as a Betylus. The mountain, in fact, is the focus of the coin of the town of Aegaea, later Caesarea, the capital city of Cappadocia, during the kingdom of Cappadocia and the Roman dominion, especially 2nd and 3rd century AD. According to Peter Weiss, the Romans may have reintroduced the ancient cult of the Three Peaks mountain, juxtaposing the triad Jupiter, Helios, Serapis to the ancient god or gods of the mountains, represented also as stars. I summarize the iconographic details of the coin's representation of the hill. The mountain has at least three peaks. The central one is high, the lateral lower. The central part of the representation, an empty area, always appears. This is a cave. According to a Christian legend, a cave in the mountain housed Saint Blasius, bishop of Sebaste, escaping the persecutions. Saint Blasius, as a Pothnia Theron, tamed and cured wild animals. The profile of the mountains can be steep or rounded like a sugar loaf. Some hills in the foreground can be represented as full hemispheres. The mountain is often represented dotted with small vertical sections. They are sometimes interpreted either as flames, remembered by Strabo due to the volcanism of the area, or as woods. Argaios woods were very famous, or peaks and pinnacles such as those that dot the region. The top is sometimes flat, sometimes a kind of shrine is shown. On the top can be depicted an eagle, Saint Blasius protect the birds, a male deity with the attributes of Jupiter and Helios, or an emperor like Septimius Severus. Finally, on the top, a simple crown can be represented. In the field can be depicted the moon and the star, a pair of stars on the lower peaks, or a triad of stars. On coins, the mountain can also be inserted in complex scenes. Inside a temple, drawn on a chariot like Betylus, and here the memory runs to similar processions with the Betylus Elagabal or with the Magna Mater. It can be depicted like a crown on the head of the Duke of the city. Starting from the 17th century, the story of Mount Argaios attracted scholars who deal with it in reference to coins and to a lesser extent to gems. So, even if the subject has a very limited diffusion on gems, it was recognized very early. In the 17th century, debate around Mount Argaios involved Francesco Gori. Gems with Mount Argaios entered the famous collection. During the following century, interest in gems faded away, and the scholar's focus was on coins. Glyptic iconography only partially overlaps coinage. There are no images of the temple with the Betylus, but complex figures abound. I retrace the variants that I have identified after isolating a non-serial example opistoglyph gem of the British Museum with the quadriga of Helios and Tyche of the town of Caesarea, crowned by the Mount Argaios. The first, a basic scheme. The Verona gems belongs to this basic model. The basic scheme. The Verona gems belongs to this basic model. The manter is represented as peak or as a sugar loaf, with the central elevation, the two lateral ones. The mount has a crown on the central peak and two asterisks, sun, stars, planets on the sides one. These stars are interpreted as Dioscuri. Literary sources remember that their lights, the St. Elmo's fires, sometimes appeared on the Mount Argaios peaks. And I want to propose a gem from Gadara, depicting the Betylus of Elagabal with a pair of parasols, according to literature, interpreted by Martin Hennig Witting as a Dioscuri hat, Pilei. The second scheme, Tom with male figure. The mountain with a steep top houses in the highest peak a male divinity with a scepter and or radiate crown. In the gem of the Capello collection, Victoria crowns the male figure. In the field can be represented moon and sun, like an asterisk. In this group we find gem of historical collection, the Capello collection, Florence collection, National Archaeological Museum of Madrid, the Tom collection, and a gem not shown here from the British Museum, with the inscription Argaios. You can find an eagle on the top of the mountain, like in all the coins of Cappadocia. Third scheme, the complex scene. In this series, two female figures are depicted on the right and the left of a small Mount Argaios above and of a horse below. In at least one case, the mountain is dominated by the head of a radiated deity. 3 pairs of female figures are attested. The one includes a helmeted goddess with rod and shield, identifiable as Athena, and a figure with cornucopia, Tyche. We can find a pair of goddesses with rods, Demeter and Persephone, or Athena and Demeter, Hera and Demeter. At last, Tyche with a goddess with rod. In a gem that we know by a cast of Byron Stosh, we can see a pair of male gods, Helios and Hermes, in the same position. Even if Mount Argaios will be interpreted as the background of the representation, the two figures seem almost to hold the mountain, which could be represented as an agalma between the two deities. This is evident where the horse appears to be replaced by an altar. We would find ourselves in a cult context, or maybe linked to the theme of the oath of which the god of the mountain was the protector. The horse has generally been interpreted as a feature of the territory of Cappadocia, as Strabo and many ancient authors remember. Maybe the horse represents the provincia, as the palm tree is Judea, or elephant is Libya, and crocodile Egypt. However, on the coins, there are no horses in association with the Mount Argaios, only wild animals, as the myth of St. Blasius recalls. Perhaps here we enter also the study of Cappadocian cults, and I accept the suggestion about it. Certainly, this is the most widespread set of gems. In the east, Jordan, Palestine; in west, Lyon, France. Many collections house gems with this variant. The presence of similar gems in Gadara and in Palestine
in part also some seals of zeugma obtained from coinage, is explained by the passage of merchants or citizens from Cappadocia in these areas, and it was believed that these gems were produced by local workshops. Certainly, an important city like Caesarea, commercial and military hub, could have hosted an active laboratory to create similar products, especially since cement was active there. However, reflecting about some Vienna gems, Sverlain herself more recently hypothesized that in Aquileia itself many of the gems with personifications of provinces were produced and then spread in the Mediterranean area for local customers. On the other hand, a local workshop should have engraved more other subjects and gems with the same patterns. These gems are quite uniformed with their round head and linear drapery, but once again, numerous comparisons for these gems can be found in the Aquileian context or those collections that preserve them, such as Verona. The style of all these engravings, in fact, recalls very much the manner of the so-called Officina dei Dioscuri, whatever was its actual organization. The Verona gem that depicts Mount Argaios is clearly unrealistic. On the other hand, the glyptic engravers worked without looking out of the window, starting from models. These very standardized products are difficult to classify. It is easy for me to find in several areas of the empire the vertical etching that is its distinctive pattern, in Britain, in Gaul, in Pannonia, in the eastern area. Of course, this pattern provides a chronological indication because, for instance, I found it portraits for the second half of the 2nd century AD and beyond. But it does not seem a pattern strictly related to a defined worship. So, my initial question about these engraved gems are only partially answered. I know what, Mount Argaios, I know when, the middle of 2nd century and beyond, and how, the techniques, but I can answer to where with certainty. And above all, it is difficult for me to answer why. This gem could be a souvenir of homeland, a proof of an oath, a memory of devotion, but it could be entered into the private sphere of the owner's tradition, ambition, and self-representation to answer why.
Thank you for this very thorough discussion on iconography. I myself find it very interesting, especially the duality that's always present regardless of the place the gem was made in. I mean, starting from the 2 stars and then with the 2 characters flanking the mountain anywhere. I think that's very interesting. It's like a pattern that sticks to this iconographic model. So if you would like to add anything now or to the discussion we had at the beginning of the conference, we still have no questions, but feel free to, anyone feels free to just ask something. I think we still have a few minutes left. Alessandra, would you like to add something to your presentation about the 2 theories you mentioned before?
No, I want only to say that we think that normally first is the coin and then the gems, but probably the relationship between gems and coins goes in the just I missed a bit. The relationship between coins and gem. Sometimes the gems is first and then the coins. In the other case, first the gem and then the coin, the coinage for the representation. And stop, only this one. Is a relationship not so immediate, not so clear. It's various, and the coin and the gem engraver have had fantasy too in interpretate the models. Probably a bit of fantasy. But okay. He were creative in interpretation of a coinage model.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to jump in for a bit of comment about this presentation or?
About the Aegaea gem, which you put in quite briefly, that is Aegaea. It is the same image occurs on coins of the emperor, local coins of the emperor, and it's actually not a mountain, I think, in that case, but it's a big black stone that he shows. On some of the coins. There's an eagle on top of it, and there are always those two parasols. I'd like to know about other gems showing it, because that's the only gem that I've come across, which was in the Gadara collection, but again, it's another Eastern cult. And as Elagabalus eventually established himself in Rome, I would be very interested if an Elagabal gem turns up in Italy, perhaps in Rome, but that's perhaps a big ask.
Yes. The gem with Elagabalus was the Gadara gem, but for instance, the two gems with Ascalona triads are here in Verona, and there are no comparison for Ascalona triads in Palestine or in Jordan, in the Eastern Mediterranean.
No.
Thank you, Professor Reding.
Thank you. Any more questions, perhaps for our previous speakers as well, for Amanda with beautiful finds from Valeria, or for Dr. Perani with a wonderful collection. She identified interesting pieces and inscriptions. Or maybe some of the speakers would like to add something to what they have already presented.
I read in the note of Margherita Facella, yes, probably we find the iconography we know. When we know an iconography, we can find it in our in digging in our collection, in excavation, in collection, in historical collection. Thank you for the suggestion about the Ararat Mountain. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you all then. We're 3 minutes to spare until our session is officially over. And are we having a bit of a pause? What are organizers suggesting? Or should we go on or just have a small break?